Welcome to episode, I think it's 6 of FatCatProduction.com, presenting News with a View. Uh, Today is January 12th. This will go up January 13th. I'm going to be busy all day tomorrow, so I'm getting this out early. I do have a correction to make on a topic that I spoke about yesterday. I think it was yesterday. It might have been the day before on the Trump conviction. I think it was the yesterday's where I had said that he did not have a jury trial. I don't know what I screwed up in my notes, but and even my head didn't catch it. I just want to say that Donald Trump did have a jury trial. He was found unanimously guilty on the 37 or 34 counts of business, transaction, fraud, whatever. And the NDA amount, non-disclosure amount, was $130,000 that had been worked out, and then over the course of 9 months, $420,000 paid to Michael Cohen for his time, plus Trump was making up, the $60,000 he had to pay, in that Cohen had to pay in taxes. He doubled that amount and gave it to him, and but there was a whole bunch of what the government of the state had said was shenanigans with the bookkeeping, and Trump was found guilty and convicted, and went through his sentencing, which turned out to be much of nothing. But he was convicted. He had to, of course, at this conviction, turn over his guns and his permit. And that follows you not only in New York State, that follows you in all 50 states, just about. I'll have to look that up again. So that was a problem for Trump. And I was wrong. Again, when I'm wrong, I'm going to state I was wrong. If I find a month from now I run across something that I said, oh, I reported on that, or we spoke on that, and that's not what I said, or that's not now the facts, will come back to that and readdress it. And as I said, News with a View, it's about facts, and we throw the emotions off to the side. We will throw some things out there, like the trial, was all political. Trump should have been charged at most with a misdemeanor, and even going that far, it should have just been, make this right, fix it, acknowledge that a mistake was made, and go from there. What was done to him was ridiculous. And the one that really threw me was May 4th of 2024, when the DA made a request to Merchant, the judge, that Donald Trump could not be told of the discovery information that the attorneys were given from the prosecution to the defense until the trial started, which would mean that really Trump would be really hampered in being able to assist in his own defense. It was I understood why the DA asked for that, because anything that was said in that courtroom, anything that was being said in the proceeding, Trump was going on social media and just throwing it all out there. So, but if he took evidence that the DA presented to the defense, that could have poisoned a jury pool, and then that would have been a disaster. And I could understand it, but it's really questionable, and it's really highly unusual. And mostly, this was a nonviolent crime. This wasn't anything. This was bookkeeping, and Trump had attorneys all look at this, and no one ever said, "Hey, this is wrong," or if they did, it might have been, hey, we're using a sleight of hand, but it's going to be all right. And the judge on May 5th agreed with the DA, but I think he limited it, to that the information could not end up on social media. That by either party, by anyone on the prosecution side and anyone on the defense side, which is, that's a good call. That's not a bad call. I didn't particularly like this judge. I think he came in with a lot of bias, but there's a lot of bias on a lot of judges, and they can put that aside and they'll look at the facts. And really, the facts, if you followed him, showed that a mistake had happened, and this was not, at least in the beginning, was not an outright. We're going to try to sneak around and do an end run around the law. I think the problem happened after questions came up. Then it became an end run around. But we'll see what happens. I think Trump will win an appeal just on the amount of shenanigans that took place during the trial. So just want to say Donald Trump was convicted by a jury, all 34 counts, and sentenced. So we're going to move on now to the beginning of the show. Long intro, a lot of talking there with the Fat Cat Studio B. We're not ready yet for Studio A yet. I ran into a couple little problems, but nothing major. Mostly time and the fact that I've been sick as a dog, and this cold's not getting better, and it might be time for antibiotics, which I don't like taking. I apologize. This is water, not vodka. I really wish it was vodka. Okay, let's go back into the news. Guess what, folks? LA fires. Disney Corporation, located out in Anaheim, California, made a donation of $15 million to help with the victims. I think that's fantastic. That's great. The government can help also, of course, and they will, and talk about that in a little bit, a couple of minutes from now. But private donations, make sure if you're going to give a donation, you give it to a recognized charity. There's so many people out there just defrauding everyone. So keep it. If I give money, I give it to Samaritan or the Red Cross. I like Samaritan because all that money ends up going to aid whatever you tell them and that they're affiliated with. So in this part of the country, Samaritan churches just they're a godsend to people. And of course the American Red Cross. And there's always, this guy gets this much money, that guy gets that much money, But if you give money to the Red Cross, it's going to end up going to where it needs to go. All right. Out of the LA Times today. The only good thing about that newspaper, and I wouldn't even subject a bird to having to use that paper in a cage. But Newsom had asked Trump not to make the fire a political, ping pong ball back and forth, and asked that the help from the federal government, not be used as a political tool. So I'm pretty sure Biden is going to do that. I'm sorry, Trump is going to do that. Biden pledged 100% funding for the state of California to handle what's going on, and that will stay in power for 180 days. President-elect Trump can, also increase that time and, work with them and change, but the government has said, the United States government has said, we're going to stand behind California. So that's good. That's a good thing. You got to remember, now Newsom gets to go and say, hey, I was the guy that lassoed Trump, and I got him not to make this a political thing. So there's good things that can come out of this for Newsom, because we all know that in 2028 it's going to be Newsom or Shapiro from Pennsylvania going after Vance. So what came up too in the article, I give the LA Times credit for putting some of this stuff out there, was that Newsom was asked if he had regretted 36 hours after Trump won the election going to the legislators and asking for $25 million to go towards the California Department of Justice to fight Trump's policies that will be possibly used against California. And it was an interesting remark made back by Newsom, who said, preparing for the inevitable of a Trump administration is good practice. So he wanted to be prepared for, Trump, $25 million to boost up their Department of Justice that can then sue the federal government. But it's interesting, they found $25 million for that and cut funding to fill up, the reservoir, which I said yesterday wouldn't have mattered. It would not have mattered. Maybe the $7 million that was cut from the budget to help pay for overtime maybe could have made a quicker response time. Honestly, I don't think so. What is interesting, and I'm going to find it here in a second, is that with all the talk about the catching an arsonist, and it was alleged arsonist, that they couldn't charge him. They couldn't charge him with arson because they just couldn't prove that this individual had done this. And it's an interesting phenomenon that comes up with that that all of a sudden it couldn't be it couldn't be used. You couldn't. They couldn't say a guy with a flamethrower couldn't be charged for arson because they didn't have enough proof on it. And kind of makes me a little crazy with that. That was the logic behind the arrest, was that they had this guy and he was caught by neighbors, and they still couldn't do anything about it. An interesting fact that came out is that this person was arrested for felony parole violation. So in California, they can let out a felon, but they can't carry a flamethrower. So that was an interesting little tidbit. Here's a map of the fire zones, the major fire zones. And that red line that I have there is pointing to the major roads in the area. Now you take a look at that. And there, where the Kenneth fire was, a homeless man caught with a flamethrower will not be charged as an arsonist because they say they don't have enough proof. Now, I thought there were witnesses who saw it. That was reported. Now, the police could have gone to them and they go, well, I didn't actually see him do it. I saw him walking around with this thing and flames were coming out of it. And, he was just walking around with it, So I don't know what the facts were, but the police said they couldn't charge him. And actually, I joked about it, but it's really a good police practice because if they would charge him and then they couldn't, then the whole credibility of the case could be in jeopardy. So they have him. He's locked up, and it might come out that he did set at least the Kenneth fires. But if you look at the map and you go through it and take a view, nothing in the middle, no houses, no anything there and the fires jump around. And yes, I get fires can jump around, but all these fires and there's fires up north too of LA and south of LA. It seems too coincidental, even though this is the highest time for fires in that region. So just some interesting little tidbits there about the map, and it seems feasible that people could have gone around and started fires. So, not saying it happened, but I'm also not saying it did not happen. We'll see what the outcome is that. So you have the Palisades, the Eaton, the Kenneth, and the Hearst fires going on right now. A little bit further, you have the Horton fire, and then Lane 1 fire, which I don't know that, but those are really deep in areas that there's really not a lot of roads with. So that's the LA debacle going on and everything that's going on with that. FEMA came out and said, FEMA came out and said that the LA fire is actually a weather event. Okay? Whether or not you did what you could to prevent it, was that weather or the other weather? So, got a lot of like the old thing, Lucy, you got lots of splaining to do, and that will happen. The other thing that was in the news today that caught my eye was a story by CNN, and the story was by John Blake, and he's a noted author. And the byline at the top was white Christians nationalists pose to remake America in their image. Now, the first thing I did was I swallowed the hook. And, I went in right away to say, oh my God, this is ridiculous. That's race baiting. CNN's at it again. I thought they got through that. But then you start reading the article. And now they had a photo of a man in front of the January 6th, in front of the Capitol, holding a cross with his head kneeled against it. And in the photo, it's a photo of a man holding a large cross, and he's and leaning his head against it. And these were one of the foot soldiers of the insurgency. He was a a white guy holding a cross. He wasn't in army fatigues. He wasn't taking that cross and hitting people with it. He was just using it as a symbolic thing. Now, I stopped. I read the story, and then got interested. And I've heard of John Blake before. He's a regular writer for CNN, and but what I didn't know is that he wrote a book, and the book's name is More Than I Imagined. And at first you said, oh, okay, now I'm into it. So I got the Cliff Note copy of the book and read through it, and I found it extremely informative. And I started reading it, and I go, okay, I know where this person is coming from. And I recommend that if you're interested in race and religion, this individual, John Blake, and I won't say it, he's a journalist, a real journalist. And he gets into religion and racism and how that all works. And he came out and said, hey, the idea of racism, a black person can't be racist. He goes, totally untrue. Anyone can be racist. It doesn't matter. And he went through and explained his experience as being a biracial child, and not fitting in with blacks, not fitting in with whites, and he had to balance that. And he goes through on how he did it and how he really managed it. And when you read, and I just read 22 pages of a Cliff Note of his book, and that's More Than I Imagined by John Blake. You could get to, and he used facts, and he used his facts, his experience. All right, I have no problem with that. And to come out and say how the process, can't be forced. And he is kind of for radical integration, but radical in the sense that blacks can come into our, I don't even want to know what you want to call it, but people shouldn't expect any group to lose their values in assimilation and just come over and go, okay, forget about those values. Forget about my experiences. Forget about my heritage. Forget about the history. And he said that all that could be brought over and experienced. But you can't use that to be racist against the people that you want to be with, and vice versa. So it's complicated, but actually when you read it, it makes a lot of sense. So John Blake, Worse Than I Imagine, took a person who myself looked at and go, oh, race baiting, and read the article, got interested, and goes, well, that's really not what he's saying over here, and then went forward to explain himself. So it was a good read. I'll probably read the book down the road, because I found it just interesting in what he went through in his discovery of who he was and how he got there, and then how he dealt with it afterwards. So interesting. The next item will be the new Senate immigration bill that's being kicked around. And it's being pushed by the GOP, and some Democrats are jumping on board because they want to show that they're all for securing the border and not just letting illegals and I don't like it. I don't like the bill. It is from what I read of it. It gives the state, like attorney general, certain powers that they could sue the federal government and ICE and stuff if they're not doing their job. And it just seems really a bit lopsided to me. And not that I'm for illegal immigration, not at all. But we have an immigration policy, and this policy would kind of really muddy the water because you could have a state judge, district judge, create an international incident because one of these little clauses that are in this law, what they want to make, is that if someone from, I'm just using this as an example, Panama illegally came into the United States, and we said, Panama, you have to take them back, and Panama goes, we're not taking them back. The state can then sue Panama with the federal government's backing behind it. I don't know if that's a good idea. I would say, how did he come through here? He came through Mexico. Boom, dump him in Mexico and make Mexico push him back to Panama. So we have laws. We have things already on the book. To do this, I just think would be would be an added burden and be an added step, and I don't see where the payoff is. So I'm not for it. I believe in one federal law that all 50 states and our protectorates have to obey. End of story. There's no fine line. There's nothing. There's yes or no, and nothing more. So, and I've just started reading about it, and it's one of these things. They're rushing it. You had 4 years to do all this stuff, and now all of a sudden, it becomes it has to get done now. Why? Doesn't make any sense. The other thing I read in a business article on Yahoo. Can we expect a stock crash during the Trump administration? Yeah, I'm like, you could have a stock crash anytime. And what you're seeing in California, believe me, any of these insurance companies that are on the hook, you're going to see their stocks crash, and might be a buying opportunity because if the federal government comes in and bails them out. So I don't know. I'm not a financial expert. If you looked at my bank account, you'd find that out. But some interesting points that they made, and of course, they're saying, well, with every Republican administration, there's been, almost, and I said not everyone, but better odds of a recession or a stock market correction, and what they failed to say in the story is that's because the Republicans had come in after the Democrats have spent so much that they had to put the brakes on it. And when you put the brakes on it, you try to, with anything on the financial side, you try to just pump the brakes a little bit. You don't want to really press hard and then slam the brakes. So you want to pump them a little bit. And so what happens is, they try it, the argument, boom, and then, the brakes get applied. And you have a mini recession or something bad. So, the idea that this will happen during Trump's term, I don't know. I'm getting tired of that stuff. The other item, which is, in the news, is Biden trying to shoehorn his legacy in through executive orders at the end of his term. I would say yes, but every president has done that, including Biden. I mean, including Trump. Is that their last 2 or 3 days? That's when the pen gets real easy to use. And what Biden has done is, of course, um, you know taking 34 people off the federal death list for execution, and just leaving 3 people on it out of the 37. Yeah, that's you know. Like I've spoken to on the other podcast that the problem with the death penalty is it's final. And I will say that there have been people that have been put to death that were not guilty of the crime. And the old idea, well, we'll let God sort it out. Well, that doesn't help that person right then and there. So there are instances. Dylan Roof, sat there with a gun, shot, and was captured with the gun and everything. You know who did it, no question. That guy should not have been, you know, I want to say pardoned because you're not pardoned, but you are. The sentence is commuted. The the thing is that some of those people that he is allowing to live, these were really bad people. And I can understand that, you find your way in prison and you change. Yeah, I get that. And that is a hard thing to not use as a guide to say, all right, the person that came in here isn't the same person they are now. A jury and the court finds, and does the sentencing. And either we have a death penalty or we don't have a death penalty. I think our appeal process is more than adequate to deal with some of this stuff. You know, I'm all for using the technology today to look back at the evidence of yesterday and saying, well, we have this, but we said this was his blood on it, and it's not his blood on it. And you have problem. Well, it doesn't matter. He was there. Okay, but that's not his blood, and that was 90% of your case. So yeah, I think that a death penalty case where they ask for DNA clarification, if it's available for that, absolutely, absolutely. But here's the stick on the other side. You can make that request, but if it comes back, and you could say has to go to 3 sources, it has to be unanimous, but 3 examinations by 3 different companies, however way you want to work that out. But if it comes back that evidence that was used was good evidence, and it held up there, yeah, 5 days later, sentence is carried out because that sentence had to have been 10, 15 years ago. And, you got your day in court, now you got your appeal, and now you got your super appeal, and you lost it. That is when you have to say, okay, carry it out. And again, I don't have people in that situation. And we have seen where people have been railroaded. It happens. And so, you just want to be careful with that and use the death penalty where the death penalty really is meant to be used. And it is just something that is final. It's it. You can't come back and go, I made a mistake. Hey, we messed up here, or it has to really be, you got the person, and you caught him. You got him. You know who did it. You know what the motive was. You got him. You got this person, and that should be a no brainer. It's circumstantial evidence and things like that where I go, yeah, I wouldn't want to be convicted on circumstantial evidence, and that's just me. But now we're going back to President Biden, and then of course his oil proclamation, as I put it, that no oil, you can't have oil, and it's real interesting on the oil because he cited, I think it was a 1953, you know, offshore shelf preservation act for offshore drilling under 1953, the Continental Shelf Lands Act. So that there can't be any two. You can't go out there and drill. Now that by him invoking that act, which I was surprised because it was an act, so it must have been invoked before. And I think the only way, not that I think, I know because I looked it up. The only way that can be rescinded is through an act of Congress. Now, we have the Congress. It's not going to be hard push, and Democrats are going to jump on there, and it will be like, yeah, right, the president, trying to do his thing, and it will quietly go away. And Trump did things like that too, and Obama, took a couple of months, but he got that off the shelf. He got it, rescinded, and Trump did that on some of Obama's stuff. So this happens. It's much to do about nothing. But the one that is interesting is there's two new national monuments that are scheduled to go up in California. And the size of those monuments then is a bearing on the acreage around those sites. Well, those two sites are going to encompass where you can't drill, you can't do anything on that property. It's federally protected property, can't do anything. Is 820,000 acres. Yeah. I understand that you wouldn't want oil wells under Mount Rushmore, or in front of it, or on top of it, drilling down, or So I get the idea of, a proportionate area that you want to keep pristine, and I think what's going to happen is Trump's going to go in there and go, yeah, okay, you can have your monuments, but it's not going to be 18 acres. You're going to get 1 acre of a monument means you get 15,000 acres around it, protecting it. So I think, and of course, Trump will be, he hates the environment. This is what happens. Drill. It. And in reality, that's not the case. And it's really a super overreach by executive power, and which I hate. I would like to see a president limited in his 4-year term that they can only have 10 instances of using the executive powers to overstep Congress, because that's what you're actually doing. You're overstepping Congress. So you got 10 of these cards that you could use, and If you use 10, you can't use any more. Can't do it. I would say go back and look at an average of all the presidents that used it and come up with a number. Because Trump had a Congress that just wouldn't do their job. Biden had a Congress that wouldn't just do its job. And there was other things you have, the Senate, but you had Congress, which makes the law, and the Senate, but doesn't. It makes the legislation. The Senate makes the law. But the idea that you can just get frustrated and sign off and push it through because Biden didn't use it as much as I think Trump would use it. And just go, I got the power? Well, why are we even having an argument about this? I win. And again, I said this before, rubber stamping stuff, bad. Bad, bad, bad. There are times when, hey, you're not doing it, you're not doing it, you're not doing it. So now, I'm the I'm the guy at the top of the ladder here, so you know what flows down when you're on top of a ladder. And I'm going to sign this. And I would be out there screaming, this guy didn't do his job, that guy didn't do his job, my guy didn't do his job, and that's where Trump goes. You don't do what I want you to do, or you don't do what you say you're going to do, you're fired, So, a lot of the stuff that Biden is doing, as far as the regulatory side, that can be corrected and fixed, and to me, it's not a super big deal. It's an annoyance, and is it being done to hamper Trump coming into office? Probably. It is also a means for Biden to secure his legacy. I don't know what type of legacy Biden's going to have, other than Jimmy Carter's gone, and he got replaced by Biden now. How long Biden sticks around? I don't think he's going to do 100. But it will be interesting to see the Biden legacy. And again, I'm all for. I was all for Biden's pardon to Hunter. I absolutely no problem with it. I would have, if that was my son, and the circumstances behind how everything happened, and the fact that, his son cleaned up his act. He was on the way of being a better person. And they were trying to use my son to get through to me. And guess what? You got the golden ticket, kid. Don't blow it. And Daddy's going to take care of you. And yeah, that would have been it. This would not even been up for discussion. But you had Biden who came out and he goes, I'm not going to pardon my son. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And he couldn't come out and go, well, we'll see what happens, because see what happens means, yeah, I'm going to pardon him. A tough thing for a father to be in that position. And where you have the ability, you're at that point God, and you have the ability to save your son, and you used it. Let's see what happens with Trump. Let's see what happens with Vance if he becomes president. Let's see what, I didn't see what Biden did was, oh my God, this is earth-shattering. This changes everything. It changed nothing. It just proved that the Department of Justice can be manipulated by outside people, outside the Department of Justice. So, just interesting facts. And I'm hoping that some of you leave comments on the YouTube page. We're not pushing. I'm not advertising it. I'm not listing it all over the place or having a company go out there and push it. Uh, Not until I get all the bugs out of it and my editing skills get a little better. Um, you know, they stink. I can do certain things, but I was not an editor. You know, I knew reading the book, if I push this button and that button, I got to see this pattern come up. Boom, boom. Okay, it's working. Here you go. Go do it. But I couldn't do that. And, most editors are really frustrated artists, and they know how, after a while, how to piece things together, how to make it look good. And if they know their producer, who's working with them on it, it's like watching dancers or skaters together. They know ahead of time what the other person is going to do or does. So at least at the level of I saw editing being done, amazing. I could never do it. I could never do it. It has to be perfect. It has to be this. And I was, when I was in school doing industrial electronics and math and stuff, and we had a slide rule. So if you managed to get it out to the third decimal point, you were good. And then you take that third decimal point and you do the whole formula again. You could probably get it out to 6 if you were really good. And nowadays, when you took your slide rule and you put it away and you had your Texas Instrument Scientific $500 back then that your parents had to buy for you, and they could have bought a Plymouth Fury 3 for $2,100, pretty well loaded, and they're giving you this little thing, and telling you lose this, you're dead. So now you use your cell phone, and when you think of the technology, a Casio watch 10 years ago. I don't even know if Casio even makes watches anymore or whatever. That little wrist computer was more powerful than the computer that was on the lunar module. So the leaps and bounds in technology and what I call AI, which is, I'd like to say was American ingenuity, but it really isn't. AI has been around a long time. But the problem with AI is, what do we do with all these people? My son had said this to me years ago. And, and I worked with AI. I worked for companies that, I laugh. I see what, look at what we can do here. And I go, well, we were doing that in 1972. So my son go, well, what do we do with these people? What do we all become waiters? And then all of a sudden they have a little, there's a Chinese restaurant in Myrtle Beach. It's really close to North Myrtle Beach. All the food comes out in a little robot. You order through a robot. And the little robot is, it almost looked like, if you ever watched Doctor Who, the Daleks, we are the Daleks, it kind of looks like that, but there's trays in there, and you bring your food is on tray 6, and it's a little kitty cat type of thing talking to you. And, that was the future. And if you really think about it, what was the automat? Haunted Hearted. None of you probably even remember that. In New York, and there were all in some of the other bigger cities, and it was kiosk food. You went in, you put a dime in, and you got a piece of pumpkin pie out of it. The cage turned, you opened the little window up, you brought it out, you put your nickel in, and out of a dolphin's head, coffee came out. You got a full perfect cup of coffee. And that really is AI. This was the technology coming out. Um, the idea of a self-driving car. That was technology driven by the military, who who set out and had contracts and said the first person or the first group or industry that comes out with a vehicle that can drive this down this road in the desert and turn around and come back and do all this without any intervention. None. Well, we're going to give them this huge contract. And guess what? You throw enough money at a problem, you'll get a solution. It might take a while. And they did. And then part of the deal was, well, after a certain point in time, we'll let it filter down into the consumer. Uh, do I like the idea of self-driving cars? Not really. There have been times when I've been on 95 and I would have loved to sleep for 15 minutes, but while we were still driving. But I don't know if I'd ever get comfortable with that. I've seen it. I'm impressed with it. I'm sure there's no more accidents with that than they are with people driving. So it's just, again, with all this stuff, everything, being done by satellites and all this, it just makes us more vulnerable. If someone knocks out our satellites, knocks out something, or you just have a general failure. And, whoa, I didn't think it would cascade and do what it did. But now you have cars all over the place, or, they automatically stop or whatever. And you have cars that aren't on that, and they don't automatically stop. And now you have major problems. So, I don't know. The same thing with air traffic control, the collision avoidance technology, and it's fascinating. It's nice to have there working in the background while I'm looking in case I miss something. It signals you and tells you, you got two planes there. I think that's a great thing. I don't know if I want our eyes off of stuff and we just blindly, get led down the road. Um, when you take a driving test, you still got to drive. You got to know how to do it. But if you don't do it all the time, how good are you? So, not sure I'm there on that technology. I'm sure there were people that didn't like the idea of a push-button phone. And now you're shocked when you see someone that has a landline. Why? So, technology coming up, that's going to be a major, major topic. And who's leading that charge? And you think it's Elon Musk. Got to think again. There are nations that are bidding their future on AI. And they have a state resource behind them that can get it done. And if we don't, as a nation, go, we have to embrace it. And you can have all the warnings, make a robot that commands that it can't hurt you, whatever you're worried about. It's a problem. So we have to address that and our medical research. We can't be dependent on other nations for our medical research and our medicines and programs and stuff. You just can't do it. It's not good business. So we have to get that back and do these things and move forward and not be afraid. You could be ethical. I have nothing wrong with being ethical and being moral and putting a religious spin on some of this stuff. But I'm also a believer that, why did God give us the knowledge to do all these things if He wanted to stop us? Now, you could say good, evil, but we were given a choice. I think for the most part, you could say it's been 50-50. But, you know, we have to go and make that jump and go, if we don't do it, someone else will. And those people might not have an ethical or moral center point. And then what? Then what happens? And again, I always say bad things happen when good people do nothing. So, well, with that, this is going to be a little bit quicker than my usual 1 hour of hearing me speak and how wonderful I am. But I'm going to say goodnight, and I will probably make a late news with the View tomorrow night on the 13th, but it will be later on in the evening. This one is being made on Sunday evening and going out Monday morning. All right. Well, everyone, good night. Be safe. And I'll catch you later as I fade to black.